Greetings, everybody. I'm your host, Mr. Wildcat. Hope you all have a wonderful day today. We are back for another one of Mr. Wildcat's editorials. Now, you're going to be seeing a series of videos over the next couple of weeks. We're focusing primarily on the Pac-12, which is scheduled to implode in just over 5 weeks' time. So it's going to be ceasing to exist as of June 30th, 2024, with 10 of its 12 members leaving for other conferences, and we'll talk about that later on. But today we're going to these videos are going to be covering the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Pac-12 as a whole. We're also going to be focusing primarily on some of these videos will focus primarily on Arizona because that's what I am an expert in. Okay, we're an expert in Arizona. Okay, and then there is so the good and the bad and the ugly of Arizona's 46-year tenure. So we joined the Pac-12 in 1978, along with Arizona State, and we are both leaving for the Big 12 in just a couple of weeks. And then we will also be covering all the other schools as well. So today's video, we are focusing primarily on what killed the Pac-12. Okay, and we did cover some material on this last summer, but this is a more updated version, okay? And a lot more facts have come out since then. So why don't we get started, okay? So to get to the ground roots of what killed the Pac-12, you pretty much have to go back about 15 years ago to the late 2000s with what our TV contract was at the time. So our TV contract in the late 2000s was basically you had some national games that were picked up by ESPN, and you also had a premium cable network called Versus. Okay, it no longer exists, but that's what it was. Versus it used to be the Outdoor Life Network until about 2005-ish, 2006, when it was rebranded into Versus, and it was like that when NBC and Comcast both acquired the TV rights to the National Hockey League after the 2004 Stanley Cup Finals. Okay, of course they had to wait a year in order to televise hockey because the 04-05 season was completely locked out for reasons which we will talk about, and we can talk about in another video because it's not relevant. Okay, but anyway, what is relevant is the fact that Versus and ESPN, they both picked up nationally televised games. ESPN was good because everybody has access to that, but Versus, on the other hand, at the time it was a premium cable network that not many people had access to. And it wasn't until about 2008, 2009 when Versus became, okay, when Cox Communications, the main cable outlet in Arizona, they wind up moving Versus from premium cable down to basic cable. But the catch was, you had to have, in order to access Versus, you had to have either a cable card or a cable box. And if you didn't have either one of those, you were screwed. No National Hockey League, no Pac-10 football. Anytime our games wind up on that network, okay? And then, of course, you have the regionally televised Fox Sports Network, which in many networks no longer exists either, okay? It wound up getting bought, eventually, a couple of years ago, it got bought out by Bailey's. And they spent way too much money on this to a point where some of the outlets, including the one in Arizona, filed for bankruptcy, and all the local sports venue channels, all the local sports teams that had contracts with Bailey Sports, the Diamondbacks, the Coyotes, and the Suns, they had to find other outlets to televise their games. Pretty embarrassing, huh? Let it show us a lesson that you don't spend more than what you can afford. Okay, that's the lesson we learned from Bailey's. Okay. But of course, this was a network that launched back in the 90s, And okay, it was basically Fox Sports Arizona. They pretty much televise all. They televise a any games that were not picked up by the national level were for the most part picked up by Fox Sports Net. Whether it was the Arizona Wildcats or the Arizona State Sun Devils. Okay, but of course, the one issue with this contract was not every game was guaranteed to be televised. Period. Hell, there were games the Arizona Wildcats had scheduled. They were not televised. The only way to get those games the only way to watch the game was to go into Arizona Stadium and watch the game in person or wherever the game was being played. Okay, if it was a road game, pretty bad, huh? Yeah. And of course, there was also radio, but of course, I'm more of a visual person. I can't listen. I can't stand listening on the radio because I need a visual. Okay. I'm sorry, guys, but that's just me. Anyway, so that's what the TV contract was like. Okay, and it was a very shitty one, might I add. Okay, so we enter the new decade. We enter 2010. Okay, let's see. We did have this. Bear with me, guys. Okay. So as we enter 2010, okay, the Pac-10's TV contract was scheduled to expire in the summer of 2012. So they had to get to work on a new contract, and they wanted to go in negotiations with the most envious contract in the entire country. Some of the things they wanted in this new contract included their very own conference network and a conference championship game for football. Now, of course, back in those days, the only way to get the college football championship game for football and, of course, the TV network, you had to have at least 12 schools in your conference. Pac-10, as you guessed it, only had 10. Okay? 10. So Arizona had to go out and. No. The Pac-10 had to go out and they had to expand. So they sent a series of invitations out to a bunch of schools. They pretty much targeted a handful of schools out in the Big 12. Okay. By early 2010, okay, reports were out about the Pac-10 reaching out to as many as 6 schools in the Big 12, including Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Colorado. Jeez, I thought Baylor was part of this too. Maybe they weren't part of the conference at the time. Oh well. But anyway, Texas A&M, they respectfully declined the invitation because they were in the process of moving over to the SEC. The reason why they were wanting to leave for the SEC was because they were very pissed off. Now you thought Texas and Texas A&M, these guys literally did not get along. Yes, they kept their rivalry going for 112 years or something like that. They still managed to find a way to play each other, but their pranks against each other they started getting worse and worse as time progressed. And of course, the one thing that broke the camel's back, the one straw that broke the camel's back, or whatever the hell you call it, or the ultimatum, was the creation of the Longhorn Network, in which was basically Texas Longhorns athletics 24/7. And they started, of course, it started off as a local television network for the Longhorn fans, but then they started reaching out to enemies' territories. And when they got into A&M's territory, A&M took it personally, and they were extremely pissed off. Not only with the fact that the Longhorn Network was stealing away that they claimed that the Longhorn Network was stealing valuable recruits away from A&M over to Texas. But when it came to television revenue, Texas would not refuse to share the revenue with its um, other conference members. They wanted it exclusively for themselves. And of course, in Texas' defense, hey, it's our network. We're the only ones on that network. We deserve 100% of the revenue. And if we wind up stealing any of your recruits in the process, that's your problem, not ours. Yeah. No wonder why everybody hates Texas. So Texas A&M, they decided this is the end of the straw. We are leaving conferences. They apply to the SEC and they get approved, and they eventually get accepted. And with their acceptance, the SEC was at an odd number of schools, and they needed to take in a additional school right away in order to offset um, their losses. Okay, in order to offset their conference. The University of Missouri at the time was eyeing a move to either the Big Ten or the SEC. They were in the Big 12, of course, and they decided. So they were ready to. They were pretty much the only school out there that was ready to change conferences at moment's notice. So Missouri wanted to pop it on board, and that's how Missouri joined the SEC, my friends. Okay. Of course, this should be. Hey, nobody. My viewers are probably saying nobody gives a shit about Missouri. Well, guess what? Arizona's newly hired athletics director came from Missouri. All right, so you should give a little bit of a shit about him, because this is where because some of the things that this we don't know what she's gonna do. Yes, it's a woman. I am woman. Hear me roar. Okay. And we don't know what she's gonna do, but you need to know that she came from Missouri, and you need to know some of the things that Missouri, what she's done in Missouri, in case she tries to implement them in Arizona. But that's a video for another day. Okay. So that's how Texas A&M and Missouri, they both left for the SEC, effective 2012. You also had Nebraska and who had decided to leave for the Big Ten, and as of right now, they're on the verge of getting expelled because of their academics, because of their they have to have like a certain academic standing to be in that conference. Okay. Then you have Colorado. Colorado accepted the invitation right away over to the Pac-12, so that got us to 11. All the other schools, they wanted to wait to see what Texas was going to do. They were all wanting to follow Texas because Texas made all the money, and having Texas around was going to make them make them better off financially. Okay, so if Texas decided to accept, all the other schools were going to follow suit. Otherwise, it was a nice effort. So by Texas accepting the invitation, of course, you would have a lot of schools. It would pretty much be the death of the Big 12. You would have like Kansas State, Kansas, and Iowa State were the only ones that would be left to fend for themselves. Okay, because everybody else, Baylor, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Colorado, okay, Texas, they all would have hopped on board. Okay. June 10th is when Colorado accepted the invitation. They would originally the invitation. Colorado would not be required to join the Pac-10 until the summer of 2012, which is when a new TV contract would start. So Colorado officially announced that they would be joining in 2012. Okay. But they were somehow able to. But shortly afterwards, they would find a way to. Well, let's talk about that in a moment. So, 5 days later, on June 15th, Texas and the other schools, they decided to stay put. Okay, Texas A&M, they continued to make a push over to um, the SEC, which they eventually got accepted into. Texas decided to stay put because they reached a deal with the Big 12 Conference to stay with the conference. Texas did not want to feel they felt guilty. They did not want to be responsible for the death of a conference. So that's why they decided to stay put. And everybody else eventually stayed put too. Colorado's the only one we recruited, so that puts us up at 11 schools, and we had to go in and find another one to offset, in order because we still had to get one more to hit that 12 minimum. So then right after the Pac-10 recruited Colorado, and Texas and the other schools turned down the offer. They went right to work and they started scouring for other members. And on June 17th, just 2 days after the Texas and all the other schools declined the move over to the Pac-10, the University of Utah, who was part of the Western Athletic Conference (WAC), and had played with Arizona and Arizona State prior to the Wildcats and Sun Devils leaving for the Pac in 1978. They announced they were served with an invitation and accepted, and they had made a deal to start playing in 2011. Now, with Utah joining on board in 2011, Colorado eventually made a deal. Okay, not long after Utah accepted and decided to make a move for 2011 over to the Pac in 2011, Colorado was able to make a deal with the Big 12 to leave the Big 12 1 year early for the Pac-10, which would eventually become the Pac-12 in 2011. Now, of course, that year we still had the same TV contract as before because that did not expire until 2012. There was no Pac-12 network at the time because we did not. Because they were still negotiating the TV contract in the process. Okay, so by the end, so basically, Utah became the first BCS buster to join a BCS conference, having played and won 2 BCS games beforehand. Okay, let's take a look at if I can look at their football. Can we? Oh, Urban Meyer. He used to coach Utah. Holy shit, I did not even know that. Well, that explains a lot. Okay, so so let's take a look at some of their bowl games, shall we? So they had played in the Fiesta. They had played the Fiesta Bowl in 2004, beating Pittsburgh 35-7. Okay. There was a Sun Bowl in 38. You had the Copper Bowl in Tucson. They lost to Wisconsin there. Oh, the 2008 Sugar Bowl, which which they had defeated the Alabama White Trash. I mean Alabama Crimson Tide, 31-17 final score. Okay, and then of course they would get the Rose Bowl in 2021. Okay, so that's Utah in a nutshell. Okay, okay. So the TV contract is now ready for negotiations. Okay, so what basically happens is in the end of 2010 into 2011, the newly expanded Pac-12 starts going out shopping for a new TV contract. And around the same time, we have some major changes in the TV outlet landscape. Okay, first one is NBC and Comcast had merged together. Comcast was the owner of the Versus network. Okay, and NBC's plans was basically to rebrand Versus into the NBC Sports Network, which the change would go into play on January 2nd, 2012. Okay, at the exact same time, NBC and Versus they had the exclusive TV contract to the National Hockey League for U.S. viewers. And with the acquisition of Comcast, NBC had the sole ownership, and they around the same time okay had renewed the contract with the National Hockey League for another 10 years, which would take them through the 2021 Stanley Cup Finals. Okay, and this was the centerpiece of their the centerpiece piece of property. And while they were rebranding this, they decided, why don't we get into the college football market too? We already have part of the deal. We already have part of the contract with the Pac-10. And what it would be nice if we can get our hands on the entire contract as a whole. Now, of course, NBC, they had exclusive rights to the home games for Notre Dame, which they've had since 1991. Okay, NBC unfortunately could not get the rights to the road games because NCAA rules clearly state that the TV rights to a particular college football game lies in the hands of the conference of the team. Whatever conference the home team resides in, that's who gets it. Okay, and of course, with Notre Dame being independent and not having a conference of their own, they were able to get a separate contract with their home games, and that happened to have been NBC. So NBC Universal they got really aggressive, and they offered a $2.4 billion contract to get exclusive rights to the Pac-12. Okay. Now, my biggest issue with this, say goodbye to watching any. Okay, with us having trouble viewing Versus and slash NBC Sports Network because Cox would make you get this expensive equipment and stuff, and parents were being too cheap to cave in to me pleading for them to. If there's one thing I was begging was to get access to Versus NBC Sports Network so I could watch some NHL hockey that didn't have anything to do with the Phoenix Coyotes, or at the better yet, have the rights to watch this Pac-12 football that I would okay. So that was the deal that NBC Universal had thrown up on the table was $2.4 billion. Meanwhile, you had Fox that was one in on the college football market for the first time ever. Their Saturday night lineup for the Saturday primetime lineup for nearly the entire network existence from the late 80s through that point was pretty much Cops and America's Most Wanted. And then from 1995 to 2009, you had Mad TV that aired in the late night time slot opposite of NBC Saturday Night Live. So Mad TV was it's Fox's version of Saturday Night Live, except it was based on a TV show called based on Mad Magazine. You are now watching Mad TV. Mad. For many years, Mad TV was okay. I actually loved Mad TV, and for several years, I would watch Mad TV as opposed to Saturday Night Live. Okay, but unfortunately, by the late 2000s, all the good cast members, Nicole Sullivan, Deborah Wilson, Ari Spears, Mo Collins, Michael McDonald. By the time Michael McDonald left the show in 2008, all the other good cast members had already left. They were long gone. And with McDonald's departure, the show is no longer watchable. So many fans, including myself, we turned it off, and Mad TV eventually went off the air in May 2009. Okay, show was eventually replaced by Wanda Sykes. Um, Wanda Sykes got her own variety show that took over the Mad TV time slot for a year after Mad TV got canceled, and then eventually that show was even worse than Mad TV, and it got to the point where they not only canceled Wanda Sykes, but they gave that late night slot back to the local affiliates. Okay, Fox realized how much money they were missing out on by not televising college football, especially on the late night time slot. So they planned on getting in the they canceled Cops and America's Most Wanted and replaced it with college football in the Saturday night time slots. And in addition to that, they were also in the process of converting another one of their channels, Speed, into a new channel called Fox Sports 1, which would not be officially up and running until 2013. But it was coming. Okay, Fox decided they realized they can't do this alone, so they team up with ESPN, and they realize, oh dear, NBC Universal's got a huge contract. We want our hands on this TV conference. So they go in together. They outbid NBC Universal, and they wind up winning the TV contract, a $3 billion contract over 12 years, which would start July 1st, 2012, run through June 30th of 2024. Okay? So that was the national contract. In addition to it, the Pac-12 had also they also set up an arrangement where Fox and ESPN would get first dibs on football games with the Pac-12. Any games left over would be automatically aired on a brand new TV channel called Pac-12 Network, which officially launched on August 15th, 2012. Okay? It was the third college sports conference to launch a dedicated network and the first to completely fund and own their own network outright. All right. Now, of course, Pac-12 Network. You had the national network that aired nationwide across the country, and then you also had 6 regional sports channels that aired within the Pac-12 territory, and each one focused on different schools within the conference under the Pac-12 Network's brand. So you had Pac-12 Arizona that aired in the state of Arizona, and they basically it was detailed coverage specifically for the Arizona Wildcats and the Arizona State Sun Devils. Then you had Pac-12 Bay Area, which covered Cal and Stanford, and they televised throughout the entire Northern California area. You had Pac-12 Los Angeles, which televised throughout all of Southern California, covering UCLA and USC. You then had Pac-12 Mountain, which focused primarily on Colorado and Utah, and covered entirely in those 2 states entirely. Then you have Pac-12 Oregon that covered throughout the whole state of Oregon, focusing on the Oregon Ducks and the Oregon State Beavers, and Pac-12 Washington, featuring events from Washington Huskies and Washington State Cougars, and that televised throughout the whole state of Washington. Okay, the network was announced on July 27, 2011, and officially launched on August 15th. The national network was available to at least 48 million paid television households at the time of its premiere. Okay, the other 2 networks that had the other 2 conferences that had a sports network devoted to a specific conference was basically the okay. You have the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC. Okay. So, network features 24-hour coverage of the Pac-12 sanctioned sporting events, including Olympic sports, as well as broadcasts of archived sports telecasts. The contract ensures that every football and men's basketball game is televised nationally. Sports not covered Sports not featured on a national Pac-12 network are instead carried through the regional networks as well as on Pac-12 Digital Network, which was launched on that same day. Okay, so they wind up. So basically, when the Pac-12 networks first started, it originally started with four major cable providers: Comcast, Time Warner, Cox, and Bright House Networks. Okay, so these four providers were contracted to carry Pac-12 Network and Pac-12 Digital Network at its launch. The agreements did not guarantee that the Pac-12 networks would be available in all areas within the territory of a Pac-12 university and minimum of 40 million homes nationally on launch date. The agreements complemented a 12-year deal that the Pac-12 Conference had struck with ESPN and Fox that began in 2012. In addition, the network entered into an extended negotiations with satellite providers. Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott stated in May 8, 2012, that sports radio station KJR in Seattle that he is quietly optimistic that deals with providers would be made in time for the channel's planned launch in 2012. Okay? By September of 2013, the Pac-12 network had yet to sign carriage deals with DirecTV, Charter Communications, and Verizon FiOS. Okay? They were able to sign a deal with Dish. Okay? About a month after the conference's launch, they were able to sign a deal with the Dish Network. Okay, it would carry the Pac-12 national network starting on September 8th. To date, it is the only satellite carrier to have struck a deal with the Pac-12 networks and was the largest paid television provider to reach a carriage deal during 2012, bringing Pac-12 national coverage to approximately 60 million households. Okay. In September of 2013, Pac-12 Networks had entered into a deal with AT&T Uverse to carry the main feed on channel 759 as well as channel 60 in the San Francisco Bay Area and 761 in LA. Okay. We basically also signed deals internationally. First in 2016 with the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, which basically allow Pac-12 to its list of foreign broadcasters that allow to be carried by Canadian paid television providers. Okay. Pac-12 Network also had deals by the end of 2016 with Charter Communications in both LA and Dallas, Frontier FiOS, and streaming service Sling TV. But it still did not have DirecTV. August 2017, Pac-12 networks were added to Fubo. Okay, Pac-12 networks got discontinued by AT&T in December of 2018. 19 million homes were subscribed to the network in of that year. 2019, Pac-12 also signed a deal with the Seven Network in Australia, as well as DAZN in Canada, to provide programming for the services. Okay. As of August 2019, an agreement with DirecTV had still not been reached. Pac-12 Network's president, Mark Shukin, stated, "Our presidents are athletic directors. When we talk about skating to where the puck's going, not where it's been," referring to the decline of satellite TV and the rise of streaming services. So, could tell you right now that right off the top of the head, all right, in the around 2016, 2017, Greg Byrne, who is our athletics director at the University of Arizona, he had been served with a bunch of questions from Arizona fans concerned who had who had subscriptions to DirecTV. Okay, is there a way? Okay, when is Pac-12 able to secure a deal with DirecTV, or is there a way is that ever gonna happen? Okay. So, all right. This was actually September 16, 2015, and I cannot believe I still have this email. All right. So, this is word for word from what Greg Burns said about this. As many of you are probably aware, Pac-12 was recently presented with a proposal by AT&T, who acquired DirecTV over the summer in an effort to add the Pac-12 networks to its DirecTV lineup. As much as we wanted all this to happen, after careful consideration and a lot of discussion, the conference's presidents and chancellors decided to decline the deal. There's a lot of information floating around, but basically the reason was that there were legal concerns and demands for guarantees that went too far for the league's universities. We know that a number of you have been asking the league to find a way to get Pac-12 on DirecTV. We're disappointed that we were unable to come to an agreement, as we know it makes it difficult for some of you to watch our events. Okay? So that was that, and then there's another one here. Why the hell did that show up on there? There was another one. I don't remember what happened to it, but basically, it said that okay, well, eventually, DirecTV was the main killer. Okay, or is about to be the victim is about to be the killer here. All right, or is the main villain. All right, they wanted a lot of money, and the Pac-12 was unsuccessful at securing a deal. Greg Byrne also said in another email around the same time that basically, by renegotiating a deal with DirecTV, you would have to, if you were to make a deal with DirecTV with what they wanted, you have to take that same contract and renegotiate with all the other providers who had already signed on with Pac-12 networks, Cox, Time Warner, Xfinity, Dish, etc., etc., etc. And if you were to do that, you risk losing providers that we had already signed on to, losing even more business in the process. Okay? So basically, at the end of the day, by the end of the 2010s, streaming TV became the hottest trend. And they were no longer interested in negotiating with satellite providers. Okay. So as we enter the early 2020s, okay, 2021 is where we're heading out to. 2021, 2022. Okay. This is the time we are approaching 2 to 3 years before the current TV contract is about to expire, and basically, Pac-12 sitting there in their corporate offices in San Francisco, playing with themselves and touching themselves and other stuff I shouldn't even go into. But nevertheless, I don't think they were doing they weren't really doing anything. Okay. Then we get the first bombshell that drops out. Texas and Oklahoma, both over at the Big 12, they announced they're going to be leaving for the SEC effective the summer of 2025. And this is part of the deal with the new TV contracts that the SEC had signed with. And of course, the Longhorns and the Sooners, they realized they were being offered more money over at the SEC than the Big 12 was offering. So they decided, okay, that they'd be better off financially over at those conferences. Okay? So we will see. And there's a lot of people out there that are basically shouting, you guys are making a huge mistake. Look at what happened to Nebraska. Nebraska was a huge powerhouse in the Big 12. And look at them now in the Big 10. They're big fucking laughingstock. Okay? This is going to happen to you guys over at the SEC. You're going to get your asses whipped every single year to Georgia, Alabama, to Florida, and Tennessee. These motherfuckers are going to whip you left and right. Okay? We'll see. Okay? I'm not here to defend Texas and Oklahoma, but we'll see what happens with them. When this news hit, some of the other schools in the Big 12, including a few who had been offered an invitation to join the Pac-10 years prior, they come knocking on the Pac-12's doors looking to join the Pac-12. And of course, the Pac-12, their response was, "We appreciate your interest in joining our conference. We feel like things are perfect the way they are right now. But thank you anyway." Okay? So the Pac-12 turns them away. Not knowing the huge bomb that is riding right under their nose. June 30th, 2022. It is made public. The biggest bombshell not only in the Pac-12, but also nationwide. USC and UCLA have announced that once the current Pac-12 TV contract expires, they're going to be departing the Pac-12 for the Big Ten. And this comes at the same time the Big Ten is negotiating a TV contract of their own. And I believe it's for like $7 or $8 billion through CBS, ABC, and Fox. Okay? Big Ten doesn't need ESPN. Not when you have the other three networks. Okay? So this is a huge blow to the Pac-12. They're in panic mode. What are we going to do? Do we stay with 12 schools? I mean, do we stay at 10? Do we go out and recruit? What are we going to do now? And of course, it's a huge blow to the Pac-12 in terms of negotiating their conference, their TV deal, because now they just lost their largest TV market, Los Angeles. It's kind of like when the National Football League lost LA back in '95. And it was a huge blow to them because they didn't have just one team, they had two. The Los Angeles Rams out of Anaheim and the Los Angeles Raiders out of the Coliseum. The Rams were the first to go in April of '95, and it was because they had an owner, Georgia Frontier. She inherited the team from one of her deceased husbands back in 1979 when Carol Rosenblum mysteriously drowned. I don't know if it was a swimming pool or the ocean or what, but he drowned and passed away, and for tax purposes left the team to his wife Georgia. Georgia wind up she followed through on her husband's plans to move the Rams from the LA Coliseum to Anaheim in 1980 in an effort to try to help with their problems with blackouts. See, the National Football League in the early 1970s instituted a 72-hour blackout rule, which would black out all home games that were not sold out 100% within 72 hours of kickoff time. And with the Coliseum having a capacity of 100,000 people, it was very hard for the Coliseum to sell out. And at the time, LA was the third largest market in the country. Not the second, the third. LA didn't become the second until 1985, when LA's population overtook Chicago's. Okay? So, Georgia was not happy with Anaheim. She wasn't happy with the layout of the stadium. She didn't like being so far out. She wanted out of LA, and after being denied Hartford, Connecticut, and Baltimore, her one chance out of that stadium was halfway through the lease, which was at the end of the '94 season, and she took that to the advantage. She sabotaged the team. She got rid of all the good performers, and she threw the team into the dust in an effort to try to lose LA interest, which she succeeded in that. And after unsuccessful attempts to relocate to Baltimore and Harvard, she settled on St. Louis, Missouri, but only after threatening to take the NFL to court for over an antitrust lawsuit, which at that point got her just enough votes to make the move. And of course, the NFL approved it on the condition they would do everything they could to keep the Raiders in LA. But of course, in order for Al Davis to get the money, they were all ready to give him that state-of-the-art stadium that he was wanting, plus those press boxes and. But the only way they would give it to Al Davis, any of that stuff, was he had to take in an NFC expansion team to replace the Rams. And there was another source out there that said that UCLA wanted in on the stadium too. And Al Davis said, "Fuck you." They wanted if the second team wants a place to play, they build their own place. I want to be by myself, and this is the way it's going to be. Fuck you. We're going back to Oakland, and that's exactly what happened. This was a huge. Why am I telling you about the LA's departure from the National Football League in '95? Well, that's the kind of same deal that we felt the Pac-12 has been feeling once they make that announcement. And of course, it was very hard to absorb it at first. But then as time went on, we realized, okay, they announced their departure 2 years in advance once the TV contract expires because they know they do not have to pay an exit fee to the Pac-12 if they wait until the contract is gone. Okay? Smart move, guys. Of course, we're all pissed off with the LA schools, or at least we were at the time. What are we going to do? And it kind of hurt our potentials at a TV contract. Okay? Now, what we did not know until this past summer, then the TV contract starts to come into conversation. Okay, and what kind of a deal are we gonna get? And the next question is, do we stay with 10? Do we expand? Do we go out and replace the LA schools? San Diego State, Fresno State, Southern Methodist. They were all potential candidates to replace the LA schools. Of course, Fresno State and San Diego State were viable candidates to help preserve some of that, to preserve whatever was left of the Southern California market. Okay, but then of course, Southern Methodist, you're reaching out to a new market. But let me tell you something, and we already explained this in my editorial last summer with the Pac-12, with the Pac-12's history, is basically, why the hell would you want a school who received the death penalty for consistently violating their probation? Okay? But at the end of the day, Pac-12 decided let's get our TV deal done before we discuss anything about expansion. Okay? So the months go by. Okay, and one thing we eventually found out further down the road is that shortly after the LA teams announced their move, ESPN came knocking on the Pac-12's door with a very generous TV contract. I don't know exactly how long it was going to be for, but they were offering $30 million per year per school. And sources have indicated that it was Utah that contacted the Pac-12 and said, "This is an insult. We want more. We demand $50 million." Okay. And the Pac, I don't know what the Pac-12 was thinking, but you should have fought back and said, "Are you fucking sure you want to do this? After all, there's no LA. We are losing the LA market after 2024. Okay? Are you sure you want to keep going with this? Okay? Instead of doing that, they listen to Utah and go to ESPN and says, we feel that 30 million a year per 30 million per year per school is an insult to a conference as good as ours. The least we are willing to accept is $50 million per year per school. And you know what the ESPN did? Slammed the door on the Pac-12. Said, sayonara, enjoy my penis. Sayonara, enjoy your fucked up conference. I can't believe I said that. Okay. There was other TV deals that they were rumored to be worked on, including the CW and PBS. The fuck? Why the hell would you want to negotiate with PBS? PBS is partially funded by the national government, but the rest of it, whatever is not funded by the government, is funded by far left radical assholes that do not watch college football, but instead have these very crazy, fucked up agendas that are being shoved down our throats by those same assholes in Washington. Okay. Okay. These people that donate to PBS, they don't watch college football. They support a whole bunch of left-wing propaganda they try to shove down your throats, including your kids. Okay? Sesame Street. You've seen that recently? I'm glad I don't have kids of my own. I wouldn't show them that. I wouldn't show them recent Sesame Street. If I would have shown them Sesame Street, I'd show them the old school stuff. Okay? Even the stuff that was made before I was born. Now that was educational. Summer of 2023 comes around. We have a year left. And there's still no word about a TV contract. The schools are getting impatient. They're getting fed up. Colorado comes out. We've had enough. We're going back to our old home. They signed a deal to join to return home to the Big 12. Okay. So Big 12 is about to lose 2 schools, so they have 16. So they have 14. They had 14 schools at the time, going down to 12. They bring in Colorado to replace Texas, one of those 2 departed schools, Texas and Oklahoma. Now we're at 13 members, and we need to figure out, okay? And the Big 12 needs to even out its conference. Who else can we do? Okay? Right then and there, Big 12 had a brilliant idea. If we're going to be going out recruiting new members, we might as well create the greatest men's basketball conference in all of NCAA. Okay? Now who from the Pac-12? Now who left from the Pac-12 has a very valuable resume for men's basketball that fits our needs? Arizona. Big 12 they knock on Arizona's door. Hey, we just brought in Colorado. We need to even out our conference. We are very impressed with your athletic history, especially men's basketball. we'd like to invite you, Arizona Wildcats, to join our team. You in? Arizona, very happy to hop on board. But it's not a very easy. Okay, and yes, Arizona would be more than happy to hop on board. But of course, it's not so easy. See, Arizona Board of Regents would have to approve a move, and they won't approve nothing that doesn't involve both schools going together. Arizona, so Arizona's having this. So Dr. Robbins, who is the biggest asshole, or one of the biggest assholes to have ever run our university, okay? Who in the hell misplaces $250 million in cash? All right? That's a conversation for another day. He has to go talk to an even bigger piece of shit, Dr. Crow, who has been in charge of Arizona State for 20 years. He has to get down on his knees and suck Crow's cock and plead to him to come with him to the Big 12. You are going to be in such, you're going to be better off over at the Big 12. Please, Dr. Crow, we want you to come. Okay, Arizona is wanting to go. There's no future here in the Pac. We want to get up and leave, and we want you to come with us. Come. Enhance the move. Quite honestly, we could have done without the Sun Devils. We would have still been able to find a way to play these fuckers year in and year out without having to have them come on board as a permanent conference opponent. See, that's the problem right there. The Arizona Board of the reason why the Arizona Board of Regents won't allow one of the two to go without both of them going is because they want that rivalry, Arizona versus Arizona State, to continue on a permanent basis every year. And they are very scared that it will not happen. That if the two of them split up, if the two of them were to split up, then they're afraid that the rivalry would be destroyed. Just like Texas and Texas A&M, they ended their rivalry after the Aggies left for the SEC. Now, of course, that rivalry, and after several years of attempts to restore the rivalry, it is officially going to be restored for the upcoming season. You know why? Texas, okay, with Texas joining the SEC, these two now have to play each other again. And of course, Texas A&M extremely pissed off. Okay, when they contacted the SEC and said, "Hey, SEC, we had a deal. When we agreed to join you guys back in 2012." We made a specific deal saying that you are not going to allow these cocksucking Longhorns over here with us. So now Texas A&M there's rumors that Texas A&M might be negotiating a move to the Big Ten. Who knows? Only time will tell. Anyway, back to the conversation. Arizona State, okay, well, of course, Arizona State's not going to do anything until Arizona State wants to hear the TV contract that the Pac-12 has to offer. Of course, everybody else wants. By this point, the Pac-12 has no choice but to show their cards. Okay, because right now they're going to lose everybody. if they don't have anything interesting. So Dr. Crow basically, his response to the move to the Big 12 was, we want to hear what the Pac-12 has to say before we even consider. Okay. Meanwhile, the Big Ten, they're observing all this little commotion going on, and they said, "Hey, look at what's going on. Look at this shit show going over at the Pac-12. We created a mess that we actually created when we took their LA schools." And you say what? I want you to be on standby. If this conference folds, maybe we can get our hands on a few other schools. Okay? And believe me, they did. They base Pac-12. They have to show their hands. It is a $20 million deal per year per school through Apple TV. Apple TV? Are you fucking kidding me? They had enough. Everybody had enough. At that point, Arizona State hopped on board. But that was not all. So Arizona and Arizona State, they decided so Arizona accepts the invitation, and of course they tell them, we will go on one condition: Arizona State has to come. Okay, Arizona Board of Regents is going to let us go on one condition: you have to take these asshole Sun Devils with you. Deal. Yee! Free ride, free ride, free ride. Okay. And then when they see all this happen, the Big 12 now is up to 15. The Big 12 is now up to 15 schools, once again uneven. So they have to go out and reach another school. And they already have their hand, and with the shit show already decided, they figured out, all right, Utah, you're next. And with the Big 12 recently recruiting BYU this past soft season, it's a good deal. It's a great fit for Utah, because it renews their annual rivalry with BYU, the Holy War. Ooh. Take that, you fucking Mormons! Okay. So the Big 12 has taken 4 schools, and that's not all. The Big 10 decides they want to get their hands on Washington and Oregon, both of which are the most valuable programs left. Okay, you two, your Big 10 material, want to come with us? Deal! Yay! So Washington and Oregon, a tasket, we're going to the Big 10. And then, so that leaves just 4 schools: Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State. Not long after all this fiasco goes up, Cal and Stanford, they sign a deal with the ACC, which creates a second nationwide. Okay, so the ACC, they go out and recruit a few other members. They recruit Stanford and Cal. They also recruit Southern Methodist in the process as well. So that is okay. So conference realignment. So we covered that. Southern Methodist. Okay. So this was around August 4th of 2023. So 9 remaining Pac-12 members demanded updated negotiations, include numbers on expected payouts. Commissioner came back with a deal with Apple TV streaming service in the mid $20 million range. Escalators for media subscriber quotas. Around the same time, Oregon and Washington announced that they'd be leaving, following UCLA and USC to the Big Ten, while Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah all announced their moves to the Big 12. September 1st, California and Stanford announced their departure to the Atlantic Coastal Conference starting in 2024. So, of course, this basically leaves, okay, so this eventually leaves Washington State and Oregon State as the only two schools left, okay, okay, and they're going, and the question now is like, what are these schools about to do? So here is basically what it says on here, and this is according to there's some articles from Sports Illustrated and ESPN. December 5th, 2023, Oregon State and Washington State have entered a football alliance with the Mountain West Conference for the upcoming 2024 season. With the alliance, both programs will play 3 home games and 3 away games against the Mountain West opponents. The West Coast Conference has also invited both teams to affiliate members for basketball and most other non-football sports. Both partnerships are expected to last from the fall of 2024 through the spring of 2026. The conference will continue using the Pac-12 name and branding for both the Cougars and the Beavers through the upcoming academic school year. So basically, what we have left is, so that's basically, all right. So why, okay, so you may be wondering, like, why did USC and UCLA both decide to leave? Well, they saw the writing on the wall. They basically took a look at the TV contract they had before, and they saw that the Pac-12 was not doing anything to make anything better. They were pissed off that anytime they got stuck on the Pac-12, of course, they do have to. They don't get to be on national TV every single week. They do have to settle for the Pac-12 networks from time to time, like everybody else. And anytime they do get stuck on the Pac-12 network, they're not getting the TV exposure that they want. Okay. And I'm pretty sure the other conferences are the other schools are in the exact same feeling. Okay, they're sick and tired. By the end of the day, Pac-12 wind up going to about 90% of our conference games wind up being televised either in the late evening into prime time, and even most of our games were being televised in the late night hours when most of the East Coast has already gone to bed. And unfortunately for a school like Arizona State, that is uncontrollable during the first half of the season because of our weather conditions, where we cannot play home games until after 7 o'clock at night when the temperature starts to go down below a certain degree. Okay? You also don't want to be playing football in 95-degree heat because our metal bleachers will send, okay, will not only send all the fans out of the seats and into the shade, which makes it look very bad for TV coverage. Okay? And that's another thing that we will cover in a future video. Okay? So, like, you pretty much, but by the time that you are able to get day games, you have to be in a position to where you are playing good enough football to qualify for those viable national TV spots. Okay, and those are pretty much reserved for schools that are doing extremely well, and they're with conference championship / college football playoff impositions on the line. So that is pretty much what killed the Pac-12. USC and UCLA, they saw it first. They saw what was coming. They bailed. And they were smart enough to bail first. And it took another year for the other schools to see the writing on the wall. Okay? Once this is all, okay, so you're going to be seeing 10 of the 12 schools leaving, Washington and Washington State, they both have 2 years max to sort everything out. Question is, do they rebuild the Pac from scratch with additional members? Do they dissolve the Pac as a whole, go independent? Do they merge with other nearby conferences? Only time will tell of what is to happen with these 2 remaining survivors. And time will only tell how these other schools will do in their respective conferences. And like I said, there will be more to talk about as time goes on. Till the next time we meet, Mr. Wildcat here reminding you all to be good, be careful, and behave.